Welcome to Tell It Like It Is. I'm Gary Polland. This show is a fresh look at politics and public affairs. Here we'll give you the real deal, not bias or spin or the major media's politically correct opinions that they masquerade as facts. When we provide you opinions, you'll know it. This show rejects mandatory uniformity. This political disease is a terminal threat for our democracy and to America's future. The anti-American mobs out there are not appeasable, and they aren't going away. You may not be interested in them, but they are interested in you. And their target is our country, our culture, our way of life. And today, I'll talk a little bit about this, because when we started this show 8 weeks ago, the ongoing violence and peaceful protest good, violence bad, has continued. And it's been going on now for months and months. The most distressing thing for me about this is the looting, the killing, the violence, the attacks on the police continues. And only one political party, up till a couple of days ago, had condemned it. That was the Republican Party and Donald Trump. To Joe Biden's credit, and some people would say better late than never, but he came forward and he did it in the last week and said that the violence is not a good thing. And he's come out of his closet and is now actively campaigning. I think that's positive. I want to see these two candidates go at it, campaign in a traditional way, taking responsible precautions because of COVID. I want to see them debate, and I want to see the violence in this country end. The killing, the looting, it's out of control. That is not what America is about. Now, today's show, and I'm really excited to have two of the three amigos. This is a show that's been on the radio in the Houston area for north of a decade. These are two well-known personalities, and I'm going to introduce them together. First, we'll go with the judge, Eric Andell. And Judge Andell has been a judge for decades. He also worked in the Bush administration in the field of education, and he has a distinguished career. He's back on the bench now as an associate judge, a judge who actually I appear in front of on occasion, and I know to say yes, Your Honor, whenever I see him. Our other guest, Ben Strussand. Ben Strussand is someone I've known for decades, an outstanding businessman, an outstanding thinker, a commentator. He tells it like it is. They are both perfect guests for this show. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for inviting me.
I'm excited to be here. So.
Yeah. Please remain seated, by the way. You don't have to stand up.
It'd
be so
yes, Your Honor.
It would be embarrassing.
Yes, Your Honor. Let's talk about the state of the country, and I'll start with you, Eric. I mean, you heard what I had to say in the opening.
I did, and I broke out in hives. I mean, really, seriously, yes. It's a political issue. It's one that we finally got a hold of. We'll make rhetorical comments about it, but how to stop it in its tracks right now, I'm not sure we can. I mean, I know that. I don't know that we can. Now, I think it's one of the greater seams like you had in 1968. I think the violence is going to hurt us politically, if you look at it from a political perspective, besides the communities.
Well, and also hurt the country, man.
Well,
bad for us, everybody, Democrats, Republicans, independents.
That is true, but this pocketed narrative is going to create a political nightmare for my party, the Democrats.
Well, what happened and why Eric is, I think, accurate in his analysis is that the liberal and socially progressive mayors and city councils of most major American cities embraced what started as peaceful protests, but then evolved into violence, arson, looting, and unfortunately, in some cases, murder. And they failed to condemn it. They seemed to encourage it to some extent, or at least they justified it as some type of legitimate political expression. And because they didn't oppose it, 3 months ago or 2 months ago or a month ago, they are now tarnished with that image. And it's opened a political seam for, I think, Trump and the Republican Party to exploit, because most of the country doesn't approve of this. Mostly, even the vast majority of the country who opposes, police brutality of any kind, that is shocked and just as upset as our Democrat colleagues here about, the shootings and the things we see on television over the last couple of weeks. When it comes to arrests and how some police officers, not very many, but a few, have handled things. We certainly want it stopped. It's just that, one doesn't justify the other.
So why, I was going to ask the judge, why does violence, looting, murder become something that the Democratic Party would, on its face, be afraid to condemn? I don't get it.
If your party were genuine about this and not necessarily disingenuous about this, we could look, and I said this, I led with the fact I see it political. And why? Because I'm a child of the 60s. I went through this. The Vietnam War, this is patty cake compared to the streets of this country. Divided over a war. And Ben, you weren't even born, even a twinkle in someone's eye.
I saw
and
it on television.
I mean to tell you, Gary, you know the politics behind that. It ruined the Democratic Party in 1968. I said on the show not too long ago, I was a genius in saying this, but I said, thank goodness that the Democratic convention is going to be remote. Because if it had been live, it would have been 68 reprise. You know how well Nixon did. You know the history behind that. And all it's going to take is, we almost had it with that 17-year-old with the rifle. Because that can go both ways. Because
so as usual, he didn't answer your question.
Yes, I did.
So let me take a shot at it. The reason why the left social justice Democrats are willing to tolerate the violence is all political, and they don't want to offend their left-wing bases. They only see through political benefit and loss.
They only see through.
Only through benefit. Yeah.
Okay.
So they're willing to tolerate a lot more than the middle of the country because they don't want to alienate their constituencies.
Come on, the people that we've seen, and the latest had been in Kenosha and whatever other city we had violence. They had people there, out of state plates. They're coming into the city.
They've had months
they're
to
moving
condemn
around.
this.
They're getting funded.
Both sides are bringing in out of state plates.
Oh, come on!
No, the 17-year-old wasn't brought in.
Look, we have had 3 months of Democrat left-wing violence, and now we're just starting to get a reaction, a counter to that.
Well, what is that?
And they're already trying to make it equivalent. Ben, both sides are causing trouble.
As usual. And this is 15 years together on the meeting. Ben, as usual, you obfuscate as well as anyone I've ever seen.
He's a smart guy.
It's the Democrats. I went back to the right analogy to this. This country has been through a division like this. It wasn't racial. It was, in fact, the Vietnam War. Burning the flags and protesting and until Kent. There's going to be a moment in time. Part of it started today when Biden went to Pennsylvania, a battleground state. Now, it wasn't coincidental he went to a battleground state to announce it. Remember, he's never said defund. He's never used those words. His
running mate did.
Huh?
His running mate was
because he's not going to do that. He's smarter than that, and he's going to get tattooed on the debates on this issue. It's hard to defend.
It's interesting that you say that, because is it really that hard? What does Joe Biden lose if Joe Biden says, "Look, I support the First Amendment. I support legitimate protests. I don't like to see innocent black people killed."
It's
just like
so
anyone.
easy. It seems like it would be.
But I said, but I draw the line at looting and violence and killing. That's all. That's all he has to say.
And he did.
Yet he's afraid. They're afraid.
He's 3 months
They
too
want to.
late.
They want to play it both ways. He wants no.
Sure.
Maybe Joe, left to his own devices, without the staff who's raising money to bond these thieves and looters and whatnot out of jail, which we know happened. If that had happened, maybe it'd been different. But I don't know. I think that's a big mistake.
He's afraid of offending the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris socialist wing of his party, because he needs them to turn out in big numbers to put him over the top, and that's where the enthusiasm, to the extent that he has it,
speaking of that,
is or lack thereof. He'll throw cold water on it.
And by the way, back, not real quick, but By the way, there was no bump for either party on the convention. We win that. We win that because there was no
Actually,
bump.
there's a
Yeah, I
debate.
don't
Oh no! You wait to
yeah,
get
Now
not
there's
today.
now polls out had Trump picking up 4 points.
Oh, no chance.
End of
Look,
the day,
I'm seeing, when I see Trump ahead in Minnesota,
Yeah.
and I see him tying or pulling ahead in
Well, that's
Michigan,
because all the
there's
violence.
something going on there. There
look,
is
at
something
the end of the
going on
day,
there.
I think it's going to be a close election.
Well,
You know,
of course,
I'm-
at 5 states. Ben
I'm
and I played this
distressed. I am
game.
distressed that Hillary Clinton says don't quit no matter what. I mean, look, if it's obvious one side, one or the other, that's fine. Then they should accept it and move on. We don't need to be dealing with that. But I want to talk about the conventions, okay? Because I watched both conventions. I thought the Democratic convention production values were shockingly weak. I think the Republicans' production values were really good. I thought Trump's speech was too long, and there was substance. And it's interesting. Donald Trump, extemporaneously, has significantly more charisma than Donald Trump on a teleprompter. Seriously. I mean, it's kind of the opposite of Obama. Obama on a teleprompter was just terrific. Really was. And Biden, you haven't heard the story. Maybe you have. Rush Limbaugh has suggested studying the videotape of Biden's acceptance speech. It was taped on different occasions. They actually would stop and then they continued it and put it together. I don't know whether that's true or not.
That's not
If
true.
that's true, that does not bode well for the debate.
You started this whole program.
How would you know?
Oh, come on. There's another conspiracy theory coming. Oh, come on.
But Biden, but I will say that, politicians, and you all know this because you've been active in politics forever, and I know you probably had the opportunity, both of you, to be on a stage with a political star who was on rolling. I mean, I had that with Jack Kemp. I was at an event with Jack Kemp at a convention. There's 500 people in there, and it was unbelievable. I mean, you could feel the audience's energy radiating from them to the speaker. Something I only experienced once.
I experienced it once with Clinton.
There you go. He had it.
I moderated a presidential debate in the Woodlands between Herman Cain and Newt Gingrich. When Herman was the thing in the Republican
was hot.
Party.
Herman was big, and you
I know what
saw.
you're talking about.
But
It's amazing.
I saw completely different, obviously. I hope the listeners understand what I have to go through every Friday afternoon on our show. but I saw completely different. I thought the Democrats' production value was terrific. They played one theme and one theme only. Got to beat Trump. This country must rise up to beat Trump. When they ducked and they came out, beat Trump, came back in. No, that's the election, guys. We can dance on the head of the pin all we want. You've got to get the voters out. The voter enthusiasm for Biden is very low. Not low, not very low.
And
but
now you've answered the question why he won't condemn the violence in the cities is because he wants to keep the socialist wing engaged and to come out and support him.
Well, that's not this violence.
pure
He
political
didn't-
calculation.
It wasn't a conspiracy theory. He didn't create
that's the
this
correct
for
answer.
that.
Yeah.
For that.
Gary, I'll say this about the Republican convention. I've been to 4 live.
Yeah, they're
And I thought the
interesting.
first night of the Republican convention remote was one of the best I've ever seen. Mainly because they didn't use elected politicians. They went to people with who gave testimonials about why I'm supporting Donald Trump. They didn't say why I'm supporting the Republican Party.
No, it was all about
It was
Trump.
all about why I'm supporting Donald Trump. So I thought that was very effective, and to the extent they stayed with that theme, I thought it resonated. To the extent that people watched it, viewership was down across the board.
Well, because you miss all the excitement, the floor, and the controversies, and like you've had those experiences at Democratic conventions, I'm sure.
Well, the just like baseball, it has the greatest home field advantage because they bat last.
That's a good.
You had to pivot once you saw the Democratic convention. You had to get people on the air who liked Trump. I mean, really not policy.
And they were smart enough, I think, which the Democrats, I don't recall them ever doing it there when they had their week. They had enough people in the room live to have some background and some applause.
Yeah.
So when there was a pause for emphasis, they got some kind of, and they didn't have to play some kind of a laugh
We
track.
will in 4 years. We'll have the White House.
Some kind of laugh
we can
track.
just sit there and do our convention from the White House.
Well,
Quite
maybe we'll
frankly,
have go back to
save
the
a
real
bunch of money.
conventions.
We'll just
'cause they
save
were
we'll
nice.
just save a bunch of money. We won't even
Yeah,
go to.
you and your fall outrage. Look, I think it amusing they have spent 2 weeks condemning Trump for having a political speech in front of the White House because he's set bad precedent and he's changed things, and we have a political tradition that should be respected. Yet a vote for Biden is a vote to pack the Supreme Court, pack the Senate with senators from D.C. and Puerto Rico, and end the filibuster. So apparently those traditions and those concerns, they only go so far.
But I will say this, Judge is right, that if the Democrats win and they want to have a speech at the White House for their, they can
they
do
will.
it.
They'll completely.
They can do it.
They'll
You have at
They can
it.
do it.
Well, then I want. You know what? I just
I'm
made
not
a
gonna
note.
condemn
I just
it.
made a mental
Yeah,
note.
I'm not gonna
that
condemn
you
it.
won't
It's
condemn
fair.
it.
No.
You will not condemn it.
No.
That'd be
You're on
hypocritical.
record, Ben. You too.
Look, once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it's gone.
Well, that's gone
I
forever.
mean, Harry
now.
Reid ruined the country with Obama's help, so we're all where we are.
Anyway,
But Harry Reid made money while he served in the Senate. Made a lot
but
of money.
having said that, we Democrats still have a chance to beat an incumbent president. We have betting odds that we'll beat an incumbent
All right,
president.
you say that. Interesting question. So, is the determination of who wins going to be Trump or Biden at this point in the election? So, is it Biden's race to lose? Is it Trump's race to lose?
I don't think
Or
Biden
both
on
of
his
them.
own can win it. That is, come out with this Kennedy-ish narrative, or even Clinton, who could sell you obviously.
He'd sell you
He
anything.
doesn't have that. He doesn't.
He would sell you your wallet back that you're taking out of your pocket.
He doesn't have that. And I said this Friday. My biggest complaint right so far is that right after our convention, traditionally you get out on the road and
bus
you
tour.
do
You
counter
do the bus
programming.
tours, right.
You have to do something to keep the narrative. It was brilliant what Trump did. Counter program during the whole Democratic.
Right.
That's what you're supposed to do. We didn't do that. We're catching up, and we don't have time to catch up.
Right.
There's one group of voters that don't like Trump's personality and despise him personally for reasons that we can go into when you have another hour. And they don't like Biden's policies. So
that's
they have to decide which one's worse. And so I think the election will be decided by that group of people. It might be down to 3 to 5%. But whichever way that falls, I hate Trump, but Biden's policies just make me ill. Or Biden's not too bad. Policy, I don't like everything, but Trump's disgusting. I'm going to vote for Biden. I mean, that to me is the election.
That's a good analysis.
And I will tell you that this law and order theme, which is where they're holding, you led with it. So there's a seam there, political or otherwise. That's a seam, right?
Right.
That is the suburban women that he so desperately needs, because the polling is against him with that demographic right now. He's got to switch that. And he doesn't have to do too much other than that, because Trump always has an undercount. People are going to vote for him,
But they don't want to talk about it.
They will not answer that polling question for any number of reasons.
They won't put a sign in their yard. They won't talk to your friends who they like.
He has a big undercount in this election.
And what you have to remember also is it's not a national election. We're talking 5 states. It doesn't matter if he wins California 51-49 or 99-1.
Yeah.
It's the same electoral
Or you
votes.
win Texas. You
right.
win it, you win
so
it.
you win it, you win it. So it's Wisconsin, it's Michigan, it's North Carolina, which was tied as of Friday more or less, and it's Florida and there's one
Well, do you
state I'm
think
leaving out,
that the news on COVID as we head into voting in the fall, is that going to be a factor?
Well, I think that, rightly or wrongly, the American people wanted a really muscular federal response to the pandemic. They didn't get it, and that's why I think Trump dropped in the polls
precipitously,
right during that time period. I was arguing actually for it. I remember writing some commentary saying, "Man, he's got to take the bull by the horns and do the Trump thing, which is knock down bureaucracy and make it,
Well, I'll tell you how more clairvoyant he was. I don't know who clairvoyant is, but he he did a one of those views. What do you call that thing? I
True
call we're on
masterpiece,
TV,
yes.
and I want to be careful here. View and using his last name as a whatever. Anyway, bottom line is that he said Trump has 6 weeks to get this correct, and he didn't. In other words, he said that, and after that 6 week period, his numbers.
But it's interesting you're talking about that. You kind of, if you look at it looks like the public advice he was getting from the so-called scientists who knew what they were talking about revealed they really didn't know what they're talking about.
Yeah,
it's all a guess.
Right,
but the buck stops there.
It was the lack of a muscular federal response, and much more the fact that the federal government left the ball in the court of a lot of governors. Having said that, that ship has sailed. We're in a different spot now. And I think Biden has opened the door for another scene for Trump, and those are these comments about, if the scientists tell me to shut everything down, I'm going to do it. And I don't know that the American people are on board with farming out that decision to a group of people who do not, it's not that they're deliberately getting things wrong, but they may not know. And they also
You don't know what you don't know.
They don't take into consideration
The
other
factors,
factors that may be a negative result other than the pandemic itself. So he can exploit that, and he can come back with that.
But isn't it interesting? Because my guy, Biden, right after the convention, has his first outward press conference, right? Senator Harris and he are sitting there. And they asked him that question. First public policy answer he has to give. If the scientists tell me to shut down, I'll shut down. There's so many better ways to answer that question. First way you answer is, I don't know what this guy Trump's going to leave me. I don't know what January 20th is going to look like.
That's a good answer.
He made a big. It was a big mistake, and we just have to get on message.
Interestingly enough, the next week and even now, that's not been a theme. That's not been a scene yet that they grab. I don't understand. Yeah, but that was the time to. Boy, was that because
the law and order is so you see.
Always
I mean, you have the left wing TV stations, and they have the reporters saying there's really not a lot of violence.
Yeah.
Stuff's burdened behind it. I mean, it's like,
I see
what
law
are you
and
talking
order
about?
as the number 2 issue. The number 1 is still the pandemic, and he's got to. I think Trump has got to move past where he was and go after Biden on this shut everything down strategy. That is not a COVID strategy.
Well, it's a depression strategy.
Because it's still the economy, stupid. See, no matter how you...
And I'm sorry, but even the last point I was going to make, the people that get hurt with the shutdown strategy are the people that can't work from home with laptops.
Right.
And so those
or don't work for the government and still get paid.
Those are the people that the Democrats purportedly care so much about, the underserved, the minority communities, the lower income Americans. Those are the people that get hurt by the shutdowns and the lockdowns.
Interesting you say that. At the gym I work out in, there's a number of African American trainers.
I was going to say, you've been working out, Gary.
Yeah, I need to do more. Anyway, but they're African American trainers, good guys. And so I was talking to them, and I was talking to them Saturday. I talked to a couple of them, and I said, let me ask you a question. I said, what is your reaction to the scenes of people eating out in restaurants in New York and in Washington and being accosted by a bunch of white anarchists who are screaming in your face to mention somebody's name or to say Black Lives Matter or whatever they're screaming at you while you're eating? And they both said, if some person came up to me and was screaming in my face, I'd cold cock them. And these are the kind of this is where some of the African American vote that's going to go to Trump is, that they don't like all this disorder. They don't like it. And I'll throw out before we break, Black Lives Matter. If you talk about Black Lives Matter, and I don't know what your experience is, but me talking to folks all over the place, if you say small Black Lives Matter, they say absolutely. And then they say, do I think that blacks should be, or anyone should have a violent encounter with the police that is undeserved? And the answer is no. And you promote no-knock warrants, and they say no. And this is from, liberal friends, conservative friends. There's pretty much everyone agrees. But the big Black Lives Matter, big B, big L, big M, is a Marxist front group designed to destroy America. It's not the same thing. And that's what I find fascinating.
You can look on their website. They'll tell you exactly what they think.
They're absolutely transparent. And I know the more that gets out, I think that hurts those who do not condemn that organization and what it stands for. It's kind of like Louis Farrakhan and
Well,
people not want to condemn him for his anti-white, anti-Christian, anti-Semitic.
You've got two seams that we don't have. It's the visuals. One visual for sure, the violence. That's a visual. That killed us in '68. It could kill us again. The other visual is you have to take advantage of it. Yet it's just shutting down the economy. Because even the moderate Democrats, of which I find myself in most instances, even though I do have a lot of liberal principles in me, don't want to shut down at all. Matter of fact, I'd like the kids back in school. I'd like a lot of things.
We're going to talk about that after we come back from these messages. So we'll be back with Ben Strussand and Judge Eric Andell on Tell It Like It Is, and I'm sure so far you know these two gentlemen tell it like it is.
Ron Carter Cadillac, Houston's only Cadillac to your door dealer, delivers test drives to your home or office, like the new 2020 XT4 Premium Luxury, only $359 a month, the new 2020 XT5 Premium Luxury, $399 a month, or the first ever 2020 XT6 Premium Luxury, just $499 a month, all for 39 months lease with just $1 down, or purchase and choose 0% APR for 60 months plus $1,500 bonus cash. Visit RonCarterCadillac.com. Ron Carter Cadillac, Houston's only Cadillac to your door dealer, delivers test drives to your home or office. Now purchase the new 2020 Escalade and enjoy $9,500 in total purchase allowance, plus 2.99% APR for 72 months with no payments until 2021. Or drive the 2020 Escalade for only $799 a month for 39-month lease with only $1 down. Ron Carter Cadillac. Visit RonCarterCadillac.com.
When it comes to protecting yourself and your partners, all the information out there can be overwhelming. Visit our website. We are a free and confidential service striving to help you stay informed and stay notified. We are committed to a healthy Houston.
Have you been injured in an 18-wheeler accident, truck accident, car accident? Was someone texting and ran into the back of you, not paying attention? It doesn't matter what it is. Give me a call, Attorney Willie Powles. We'll fix it today. The number is 281-881-2457. Again, that number is 281-881-2457. We'll fix it today. Call Attorney Willie Powles.
Welcome back to Tell It Like It Is, and we're continuing our interviews or discussions with two great guests, Judge Eric Andell and Ben Strussand. And as you can tell in the first half of the show, these are two very knowledgeable individuals who tell it like it is. So we're going to continue along that score. Let's talk about Texas. Okay, there's been talk
about what?
About Texas. Well, we're going to talk about
Texas flipping?
Yes. Is Texas ready to go blue? All right. John Cornyn, the senator, U.S. senator, in running for re-election, is he in trouble? Is Trump going to lose Texas? Are the Democrats going to take control of the Texas House of Representatives? Are they going to pick up House seats in Texas? That would be including all of that.
That's a different question. Want to talk about that?
I do.
From my lenses?
Well, yes.
My lenses first. Not because I'm usurping you. But I like you to close the debate because it's easier.
I'm sitting here very patiently waiting for you to go ahead.
If I had $1 left, and that's all I had left, and
I hope you don't. I hope you have more than that.
Not much more with Trump's policies, but if I had $1 left and had to bet it black or red on the roulette wheel, you'd have to say blue or what? Red. Texas is going Republican nationally. I mean, really, I don't even know how they even got into the pink column as you look at that. I don't know how that happened. It's maybe a lingering Beto effect. I don't know. The House is a little bit different. That's a fight within a fight. That's within, like Fort Bend County being a little more bluish. All these counties, isn't someone out in Cy-Fair area, a Democrat that won somewhere in that 290 corridor where there hasn't been a Republican.
2 years ago there was some Democratic breakthroughs, primarily because O'Rourke had $80 million to spend. Cruz didn't take him seriously, and the media didn't tell us who the real Beto O'Rourke was. It was the Beto O'Rourke who wants to be the gun grabber. Well, the Democrats would have gotten
But
slaughtered.
remember, those are just local.
But they got away with it.
Well, you don't know what those candidates are campaigning in, and there's a changing demographics in all those House races. So I'd say it's closer. I think it's a possibility, the House will flip.
Yeah, so the state, Trump probably wins by 5 or 6, I would think, which is less than would be typical. And then in the congressional races, I wish I could give you, some kind of analysis on that, but as far as I'm concerned, it's just a coin flip. I mean, you've got a race here in Houston, I think, was it CD7?
Fletcher.
Lizzie Fletcher and Hunt. And
both well financed.
an interesting thing, they run these campaign ads. Lizzie hasn't told anybody she's a Democrat on her campaign ads, and Hunt hasn't told anybody he's a Republican. So, she's obviously a she. He is an African American, and they're just, they're trying to obfuscate, I think, to appeal to some slice of the other one's votes.
And there's a reason for that, Gary. And we can debate this, not a debate, but we can talk about what the legislature should reverse a decision they made. We'll know after this election. There's no lever this year.
No straight ticket.
No straight ticket voting. So you have to. So Lizzie Fletcher and what's his name? He's a good
Wesley
guy.
Hunt.
Wesley Hunt.
Good guy. Wesley Hunt.
Yeah, your West Point graduate, pilot.
Good candidate.
He's got to sell something other than supporting the ticket pool, which has been a very good. Yeah, you got to go down ballot. You got to go find these guys.
Some of the Texas counties have enormous.
And women have a built-in advantage, by the way, in the down ballot.
Always had.
Always have, and certainly recently. Clear, you can see by some of the judges we lost. It was just incredible, really good ones.
Well, some of the Democratic judges got beat by women.
But I think that the headline in Texas might be after November 3rd that M.J. Hager, who is the Democrat nominee for the U.S. Senate against John Cornyn, that she's going to lose, but she may get closer to Beto O'Rourke type numbers, 2 or 3 points, that kind of thing, against an incumbent U.S. senator. The good news, he's been around a while. The bad news, he's been around a while. So, I mean, he's the heir apparent to Mitch McConnell, essentially.
If he had retired, but I mean,
well, how are you going to sell? And my party has a problem with this, selling voter enthusiasm down that ballot.
It's hard.
There's no marketing going on for that. We got tied up in the argument about mail. Everything's been tied up in voting, but nothing's been spent by my party, at least, going down that ballot.
And the theory, my theory had always been, is you build the party from the ground up. Then you have a lot of good base candidates who are actually campaigning and encouraging people to vote along with it. But now, in the new world, you got to build your own name and get support
and it's the
and get people to vote 20 pages in.
It's the
seriously.
It's the state house races that are the most important, not the congressional.
Because of redistricting.
Because of redistricting and the 9-vote margin, and for Republicans, maintaining that margin and not giving it up is absolutely critical.
Yeah, because the House seats, if we meaning anytime the viewers say we, I think that they know that this is Democrat. Democrats, because the House. I'd be surprised if the House of Representatives flips. So any
state house.
I'm talking about the national.
Washington.
Meaning Dan is right. Meaning that it's the local races that are going to be critical in their import, because whether Lizzie wins or doesn't win is not going to impact the Washington House. I don't think anyone's been calling it close. That one vote, two flips do it. I don't know what it would take to flip the House of Representatives.
25,
23, I think.
I just don't believe. I don't believe that's on the table. Had Trump not pulled out of this nosedive that he was in, the 6-week spiral he was in, the Senate would have been a lot more in play.
Well, yeah, the Senate is in play.
I mean,
it
the Senate
is
in
U.S.
play.
Senate.
Yeah, the
not
U.S.
the state Senate.
Which is the most, probably one of the,
Key-
besides the White House, I mean, it's the most important thing. Republicans have a 3-seat majority. We're going to pick up that seat in Alabama. So Democrats have to win at least. They got to tie. If they were to win the White House, they would have to tie in the Senate. So
Which is an easier task, not winning the White House and tying. I'm just saying if we can get the tie.
Yeah, there's some others. Gary Peters in Michigan's a vulnerable Democrat against an African-American Republican, another West Point graduate. Ran an impressive race against the other senator there last time.
Well, I mean,
So
that's where if Trump wins Michigan,
Even they pull him
he
through.
was ahead on Friday, which again really actually surprised me that he would. But I think the violence. You go back to what you started. I mean, people's attitudes shift back and forth based on what they're seeing.
And we've got nothing much to shift it. In other words, the narrative now is with a Republican. We have no narrative. We have the Trump narrative. That is our narrative.
Right. We don't like him. We don't like him.
We got to get this guy out of there.
Okay, how about the debates? They're going to happen?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. He doesn't want them to happen. He's on the Nancy Pelosi.
Why would I want my guy to go on that
Don't show
stage?
up.
Well, I mean, I guess the short answer is if he goes to the debate and performs, the media is going to say how great he was. It's like what they said about his speech, which I thought was just fascinating. They said, "Oh, it was great," and my comment was, "All Joe Biden proved is he could read a teleprompter, which is an accomplishment." But
they've dumbed down the expectations for Joe Biden
low.
at the debate enough where the headline will be Biden holds his own against mean, nasty Trump. I mean, the headline's already written.
This election turns on, I believe, if I read this correctly, the smallest number at this date. Now that'll switch of uncommitted we've ever had this far out from an election. So he has to debate because people will use that
they
as
expect it.
You have to debate.
So if he goes to the debate, what if he fumbles? What if he fumbles at the debate?
Well, he'll
has
fumble.
like has a senior moment, which can happen to anybody. I mean, a senior moment could happen to Trump. I mean, let's be realistic, but let's say it happens to what happens to both of them. Then you're going to say, "Oh my God!"
I actually think only the first debate will matter.
It'll be the highest watched
Which is,
debate.
I think, September 29th.
Really?
Do you not think that will be the highest
it'll be
viewed debate? Maybe since
it'll be a Super Bowl
Kennedy
type
Nixon,
number.
maybe Kennedy Nixon, apples and milk. That is not,
Which is fascinating. Fascinating. You talk about Kennedy and Nixon, and the Observer said if you listen to it on radio, Nixon won, and you watch it on TV, Kennedy won. Which is the power of television. Like you guys on radio all the time, now you come on television, is a different attitude. You see that.
it's body language,
it's fascinating.
and I do agree with you, Gary, on the fact that Trump can get hurt in the debate. It's not like it's not like my guy is going in there and he should never even think about doing it because he has nothing to do but lose.
He'll have lines preset.
Trump-
Right, Biden. He'll have.
But we remember him.
Yeah,
That's the question.
I can't do anything about that, boys. It's just my phone here. So if it rings, well, it's mine.
As a Democrat, what do you want?
Well, I've got this new Apple Watch, and I can't. There's nothing I can do about it.
You get paid for that ad?
Yeah.
So look, there are 3 days left, roughly
Yes.
60 plus to go, and the election is not won or lost from where I'm sitting right now. But I do think that what matters is not the absolute gap in the polls. In other words, Trump's up by 8 or Trump's up by 7. It's the direction that people are going in the last week or two. So if the gap is closing in that last week or two, then I think it's advantage Trump. If the polls are widening out again, it's advantage Biden. It's the momentum, the direction of the polls.
Let me go in a different direction. Texas population has been growing significantly. We've had a lot of people come here from the West Coast with good reason. Get out of California.
That may be the Republicans, though.
Well, I don't know. I mean, my question is, are these people coming to Texas going to import California values, the kind of values that have put that state in a spiral? Or are they coming to Texas because they like Texas values? Or is it something in between?
I don't know that it's Texas values, but it's certainly Texas economy, and that would tend to drive what you'd call the business, the entrepreneur here tends to be Republican. I mean, you look at your tendencies of who these folks might be.
Free enterprise capital.
The employers, the free, and no, I would say Texas's population, other than the fact that we have other folks moving in also from all over the United States. But if you use that same analogy, I just read today where in New York City, there's a huge migration here.
From New York.
From New York
here
and to Florida because of the obvious weather and also
New
the
York
same.
Republicans are like liberals here.
I just don't know. But I will say this, Texas is moderating to say the least. It's not a hard red state anymore. It's not that. It's not that.
So is it changing because of the people moving in?
Yeah, well, all of a sudden the numbers can overwhelm you. there's going to be even when those youngsters get to voting age, the demographics change.
Yeah, well, I don't cede any territory or any arguments because I think we have the better arguments.
So you've education.
So right, so it's just a matter of, I think, as a conservative, and again, I'm more of a conservative than a Republican, but
Right.
that's a difference that, again, we'll have another hour or something.
Yeah, we could.
But that the arguments, I think, support the types of policies that we have in Texas. So as we state matures, so to speak, then we have these issues come up, we'll be on different sides still. And I think we can still attract, cobble together a majority. For example, I don't see the Hispanic vote to Democrats simply because they're Hispanic. And Eric is absolutely convinced that Donald Trump won't get more than 8% of the African American vote, like he did in the last election. And I think it'll be probably closer to 12 and may get as high as 15.
Well, you win.
I think anytime you have a block that's so overwhelming on one side, you can only go one way.
That's true. And Biden did have that stupid comment. If you're not voting for me, you're not really black. It's like, what?
Guys,
come on.
I should have left when the show started after I made the one comment. Now I'm convinced again because no one listens to me. You either are not going to reelect Trump or this whole camp. We spent a week in the convention. Period. The end.
About Trump.
Trump. It's always going to be Trump. It's going to continue to be Trump. Now, they'll tie it into the coronavirus. In other words, you tie it back in, but they're going to, no, you've got Trump. We've got Biden. You've got Trump. I don't know how else to cater. That's all we've got.
It's clearly the uniting factor on their side is a hatred of Trump on all levels.
That's our enthusiasm.
And they're trying to make character. Biden said it. Character is on the ballot, right?
Yeah.
So that's what he's leading with. And again, that group I'm talking about, policy. If it's on the ballot, we'll win. If we don't talk about it, they'll win.
Fascinating. We'll have to see how that all works. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about, we'll do a little local. Harris County, one of the biggest counties in the country. Democrats have basically taken over the county lock, stock, and barrel for the most part, politically. We have a couple of Republican state senators, your amigo, Paul Bettencourt, Joan Huffman, and then we had our share of state reps. But
if you look at the demographics of that vote, the divide, even in those carved districts,
tighter.
The gap has been closed. But Gary, until we have the first non-lever election, I don't know what to make of whether this is a blue or a red. Because a lot of times you've always had the more attractive top of the ticket. In a gubernatorial year, that didn't work the last gubernatorial.
No, we had some,
but that was a lever.
A lever pull. So the lever pull gave us Lita Hidalgo, county judge.
It gave my party, every Democrat. No one survived the local races.
Nobody survived.
No.
Yeah, it's a question of which faction, party, do you think will go all the way down the ballot to ensure that they get all of their people in. I think Republicans are more likely to go all the way down than Democrats.
I was going to say the same
that's
thing.
just, I have no evidence other than, anecdotal to support
And that's
that.
what I was going to ask you the question. Was that a good, I know the Republicans voted it in. Obviously, they have control of everything in the state. Now, I'm not sure, I'm not sure where the debate line is on that, whether you take
Well,
pro or
the
con.
original proposal, some wanted it to
was just
go
for
into effect-
judges.
to go into effect 2 years before.
Right.
And they didn't.
And actually, it started out with a simple discussion about
Yeah.
judges, getting the judges off the lever. Even I supported that, even though I knew a lot of our bread and
Or
butter.
appointed retention, which is something we
And
talked
I've
about.
always been, listen, I've been through all the wars.
You have.
I survived, and I didn't survive, but
Well, you survived some sweeps.
I
and others
survived
you didn't.
94.
Yeah, it was
Holy
amazing.
moly, right?
Yeah, you were one of the few.
And I won Harris County in 2000.
Yeah, but you also had cross-party appeal. You had,
yes,
you
I
had
did.
Republicans who liked
They
you.
probably saw my TV show, that's why.
But this vote in November, it's going to be a national vote. It's going to be, I'm supporting Democrats and Biden, or I'm supporting Republicans and Trump.
You don't see a
I'm
lot
not
of people
sure it
going
matters.
back and
Yeah,
forth.
there's not going to be any, just a question of how far they go
So
down.
are you saying that politics won't be as, like in a national election, there won't
not
be
this-
some local?
No,
Okay.
not much. And in 2 years, it'll be a different story, because then you'll have, Miss Hidalgo on the top of the ticket, so to speak, and we have the governor and lieutenant governor.
Well, my sources tell me she'll be challenged in the Democratic primary.
Well, I don't.
Hard to beat, though.
In the Democratic primary? Wow.
She'll be
Okay,
hard to
so she'll be challenged, and
Woman
she'll
is-
clearly be challenged in the Republican, by
Oh, yeah,
somebody.
that's a given.
She was an accident.
That's a given.
Yeah, but I mean, she
They've
is
done a lot of damage.
She has
They've done a lot of damage to this county.
You're right, and I don't know how I'm in this position of defending her. Well, I'm going to let you do it. You go ahead and defend her.
I like her
I know you like her.
They've
Yeah.
spent-
She's a woman.
for any number of reasons.
I know she's a
They
woman.
spent so much money out of their funds on, mail-in ballots to everybody, on whether you're dead or alive. We've got all the
Not
housing
mail-in
subsidies
ballots,
they want to
mail-in
do.
requests.
All the
Mail-in
stuff.
requests.
I mean, it's just hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars have gone right into the toilet.
Eric likes her because she's a woman, she's an Hispanic, and she's an
single.
Hispanic
And
woman.
And she's single.
And she's a Hispanic woman. Those are the
Yeah,
big three for
and she
Eric.
and I, and I've said it publicly. I mean, on our show. I mean, she and I have our differences about lockdowns, and we have our differences. You have to moderate some of that.
There's a lot of lockdowns still going on here. I mean, in the Houston area.
And the fact that she has come out and she has launched this campaign to prevent the public schools from opening,
that's just-
I think has completely blown up in her face. When the administrators of 10 or 12 of the urban districts in and around Harris County, sent their letters into the county health department and to the county judge, they said, this makes no sense. We believe our students need some amount of in-person teaching experience, and under your criteria, we would never reopen. So, and I didn't hear a response. I mean, I heard no political response, nothing. So I think that this strategy that she's embarked on is not appropriate for our area. It may work in New York and play
Well,
better politically.
She is surrounded by
but
New York advisors.
yeah,
so that's probably
but it
not a
doesn't
big
work very
surprise.
well in Harris. And
I think
Southeast
she's
Texas.
I think she's a one-termer. I think she'll be knocked off either in the Democratic primary and or the Republican candidate for county judge election. Ed Emmett would have beaten her if he had run a campaign that defined his opponent, which he never did because he never took her seriously. Which, of course, that goes to show you there's a lesson in politics. You better take every opponent seriously. You never know.
He had to finally start campaigning, and that's always his danger of there's no lever pull one way or the other about how to educate people. If you pull
Right,
the
you want to
lever,
split
come
a
on.
ticket.
I
Yeah,
mean,
you
he
can
had
vote
to
for
figure out how to
them.
split a ticket. I mean, it's
Yeah.
hard enough to get people to go vote, much less.
And he was a good county judge. I mean, we didn't agree on I didn't agree with him on everything. I'm sure you didn't either. But there's a lot of things he did well. He was a smart guy, and I know he was stunned.
But
Everyone was stunned.
I just don't know what the lever is going to mean, because otherwise I'd take Judge Hidalgo to win. I mean,
She's not up this time.
No, in 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah, but it's a gubernatorial year, no lever. I just don't know.
Yeah,
It depends on whom do we put at the top of the ticket.
It also depends who gets elected president and how popular they are. Because it's a midterm election. So,
and how many appointments come out of Texas that might affect the top of that ticket?
there you go.
Republican
Maybe you
appointments.
could clear the bench, is what you could do.
It could. There's
Well, that's a
enough
good
talent at the top, liked talent by. liked by President Trump that he could pluck some state leadership. Sure.
Yeah. And then with Governor Abbott at the top of the ticket, you know, I for one, have pretty much, I mean, if I put myself in Greg Abbott's shoes over the last 4 months, I can't think of anything that I would have done differently, really.
Well,
I mean, with what you knew at the time, you knew.
That's it. You knew what you knew.
And so he's taking flack from the right wing of the party because those folks don't like the government telling them what to do.
Right.
And then he's taking flack from the Democrats and the left because he's not being draconian enough. But I think that he has applied the correct amount of intervention, only intervening when he felt it absolutely compelling to do so. So, for example, when Lena Hidalgo wanted to throw people in jail for not wearing a mask, you know, he stepped in and put a stop to it. And at the same time, he realizes that when infections are moving higher, you got to take preventative action, and so he's done that too. But he you know, people don't, I think, don't appreciate that there's no clear-cut guidelines for this thing. There's no clear-cut.
You're learning as you go.
You're learning as you go. Yeah. And some of the things you can measure, like hospitalizations. You know, the objective was always in managing this pandemic to try to prevent the hospitals and the healthcare system from being overrun.
That was what
that
they
was
said.
the objective.
That's what
there's no cure.
It's not to prevent all infections. It's to prevent the healthcare system from being overrun.
Right.
And so I think he's done a good job of preventing that from happening.
And I guess he's running, unless he goes to Washington to do something else, I guess he's running for re-election.
And I assume he is running for real. He'd be a third term. Right. I guess we must not be. I guess there must be no constitutional prohibition. Is there? Must not be.
And like we said, if the Democrats want to run somebody that has a shot at winning, it has to be somebody who's
a centrist.
Leaning Democrat, but not known as a Democrat, like a prominent sports figure or something.
Oh, you're telling me that Beto O'Rourke would not be?
No, I don't think somebody like that can win.
No, but it would have to be a prominent, well-liked businessman.
There you go.
You know, who's done extremely well.
Like a sports hero.
All right.
You know,
well,
governors.
On that note, our time is up.
Oh, well.
The two amigos, Judge Eric Andell, Ben Strussand, you all were great.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks for being here. And they did tell it like it is, didn't they? Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week at the same time and same place. And you can email the show at Gary Polland at AmericanStarTV.com. You can get my bi-weekly newsletter, the Texas Conservative Review, kind of tells you where I come down, by signing up for it free at TexasConservativeReview.com. Remember, in the immortal words of President Ronald Reagan, one of my favorite quotes, you and I have a rendezvous with destiny. Will we preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or will we sentence them to take the final step into 1,000 years of a new dark age? That's as true as when Reagan told it and said that 30 years ago. We'll see you next week.